If you could evaluate and improve only one area of your website, which one should you concentrate on? In the previous video, we covered the 7 elements that need to be examined if you're looking to determine if your website's working for you or against you. And today we're going to cover the number one most important element in the mix. Hi, I'm Beth Livingston with Triad Web Advisors. Welcome to Honest Website Reviews, where we help you determine if your website is working for you and not against you. So let's get right to it. Most business owners are very surprised to find out that their website could be driving people away instead of drawing people in. And there's one primary reason for this, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. Now, a lot of people will say that user experience is the foundation of building trust and credibility, and that it's the first impression. That is true, but it really is more of like the umbrella, because so many of the other elements that stand alone also fall under this umbrella of user experience. And you'll see what I mean when we go through this section where we break this down into the specific sub-elements under user experience. But why it matters is that good user experience is what creates your satisfied customers. They stay longer, they engage with your content, and they're more likely to convert into paying customers. And even though it's implied in the name, user experience is actually a strategic process where you arrange and enhance visual elements, usability, and accessibility of your site to give it a more intuitive navigation so that people can find what they're looking for quickly. As I mentioned, user experience is about first impressions, and that is the first impression that folks get of your business is from your website. Good user experience drives engagement. You want people to stay on your website and find what they're looking for, and it builds trust. When you have a good user experience, you get credibility, and the visitor has a whole lot more confidence in your business and your brand. So here are common, very common user experience mistakes: cluttered navigation, ignoring accessibility, and poor mobile experience. So cluttered navigation, I'm sure you've been on websites where the menus are multiple layers or the menus are all over the place and you can't figure out how to find what you're looking for. Users shouldn't have to hunt for what they need. So you need a site structure that is not confusing and makes information easy to find. Accessibility. As I mentioned before in a previous video, accessibility is designing the website so that those who have limited vision and limited hearing can use your website just like someone who did not necessarily have a disability. And if you don't do this, it actually is a legal requirement in the United States, so it's very important that we pay attention to that. Poor mobile experience. Non-responsive design frustrates mobile users. I can't say that enough. And over 60% of web traffic now comes from mobile devices. So it's very important to optimize your site for mobile. Now we're going to break it down into the individual pieces of user experience. The first is professional design. Yes, that matters. It matters that your website doesn't look like a cartoon. It matters because it's the first impression of your business and you want to look professional. It's also important to keep things simple. Your site should be intuitive, easy to use, and visitors should immediately understand what you do and how you can help them. In 3 to 5 seconds, your visitor needs to know, do you have what I want and how do I get it? And every page on your website needs to have a clear purpose. User experience will guide visitors toward the information or solutions that they're seeking. They don't have to hunt for it. The next part is visual layout and structure. The content needs to be organized. It needs to have headings above sections of text that are in hierarchical order, which is the next one, create visual hierarchy. The organized content and having headings is because when Google scans a website, they're looking for organized content that tells them quickly what it is you do. And if your content is scattered all over the place, you've got heading 1, and then you've got heading 5, and then you've got heading 3, that makes it very confusing for Google. They like things organized like a book with a heading and a subheading and a sub-subheading. So you want to organize that content and create a visual hierarchy. And then, of course, we're back to the ensure responsiveness. Mobile responsiveness is very, very important. And to have consistent navigation. Predictable menu structures so that users always know where they are. You can also employ things like breadcrumbs, which gives the user the ability to back up 1 or 2 pages without having to go all the way back to the beginning and start over. The next is effective call to action, and this is probably the most important element of user experience. And it frustrates me to no end. I land on websites every day where there is no call to action. It's just telling me what you do, your mission statement, how great you are. I don't care. I want to know, do you have what I want and how do I get it? So what do you want the client to do? What do you want the visitor to do? Do you want them to book a call? Do you want them to go to your product page and purchase something? You need to guide them with specific, well-designed calls to action, which is a CTA. And well-designed calls to action can actually increase conversion rates by up to 300%. Visibility. Your call to action needs to stand out, usually with contrasting colors. It should be normally a button, and so it should stand out on the page. The calls to action should be strategically positioned at decision points. That means all the way down the home page, not necessarily just once in the hero section. And it needs to use action-oriented specific language. Click here is not specific language. Book a call, that is specific language. Now we're going to talk about the hero section, which is generally where the call to action is placed. And you can see by this example from my website that my call to action is order a full website assessment. I have a secondary call to action lower down on the page where folks can download a checklist. And we'll talk about secondary calls to action later on. But the critical section is this hero section, or what is above the fold. Now, the reason they call it above the fold is because back in the newspaper days, newspapers were folded in half, and all the good stories, all the headlines, all the sensational stuff was above the fold. So the same thing applies to your website. I've already mentioned that generally people decide within 3 to 5 seconds of landing on your website if they're going to stay there or not. So your hero image and your hero section really has a big impact. You need to provide a clear value proposition, communicate what you offer and why it matters. And then you have to have that compelling call to action. One prominent call to action that directs visitors to the next logical step. As I said, it's also acceptable to have secondary call to action, but it's not necessary. But the primary one, absolutely necessary. Typography and legibility. Good typography reduces reading fatigue and frustration. It helps users quickly scan and understand your content. So you want to make sure you choose clear fonts. It needs to be readable typefaces. Do not use script typefaces. They are difficult to read. They're difficult for screen readers to read, and it doesn't bring clarity to the situation at all. Back a long time ago when I first started in web development, most of the web developers were very young, and the audience was very young, and so the typeface on a website would be 10 or 12 pixels. Today, that is super small and very difficult to read. So a minimum 16 pixels for body text is what the standard is right now. And that makes your website super easy to read and does not cause reading fatigue. You also want to maintain contrast, spacing, and alignment. The contrast is also for accessibility. You want to make sure that your text stands out from the backgrounds. Do not put yellow text on a red background or vice versa. It might look like it stands out, but when you look at it later, it really doesn't. Or yellow text on a white background. You need to be very, very cognizant about this because this is a huge mistake I see all over the place. You also want to maintain consistent line height and paragraph spacing. And we'll talk about white space here in a minute too, because that has a factor in this whole contrast, spacing, and alignment. The next element of user experience is a cohesive color scheme. You generally probably have a logo and it has certain colors. And so the colors of your website should also reflect your brand. There's also a 60-30-10 rule where you have a primary highlight color, a secondary, and then an accent color. And that needs to be distributed appropriately and not have too much in one area or the other. In other words, you don't want to have 60% of your accent color and only 10% of your primary color. And colors have an emotional impact too, so it might be a good idea to study up on which colors evoke the specific feelings and associations that you want people to. For example, red generally invokes a negative emotion, whereas green and blue is more of a calming emotion. And then we're back to accessibility. Ensure that you have sufficient contrast for all users, not just well-sighted users. And now we get to the topic of white space. White space is good because it reduces visual clutter. It improves the content focus, and it creates a premium feel. In other words, it prevents cognitive overload. You've seen these websites where the typeface is small and it's just lines and lines and lines and lines of text. That is overwhelming to most users. It's going to direct the attention to what matters most. And if you have enough white space and it's distributed properly, it really does signal quality and professionalism. It's not just empty space. It makes your content more digestible, easy to read, and more impactful. The next section of user experience is images. In some cases, it doesn't really make sense to have a whole bunch of images, but for most people, it's a good idea to have high quality, relevant images on your website because it increases engagement by up to 94%. And now with the help of AI, there's really no excuse. You don't have to buy them, you can create them. But these images help with branding, bringing your products to life, and it will improve your search rankings if you manage those images appropriately because there's some accessibility issues, but we'll talk about that later. Now, the next thing is video. Should you use video? Well, video increases conversion about 80%, and most people, 64% of people, would rather watch a video than read text on a page. I know this is true of me, especially when I'm looking for instructions on how to use a piece of software. I don't really want to read and see screenshots. I want to watch a video because I can put it on 1.5 speed and get through with it a whole lot faster. And that is generally the opinion of most visitors of websites. And they found that when there's video on the page, that people spend 2 to 3 times longer on the page when there's video. Now, you might say, but my website, I don't want to do videos and it doesn't really mean, maybe that's true. Maybe video doesn't apply to your website, but explainer videos are really good because if you need to explain something that's complicated. Testimonial videos are excellent if you can get your customers to do it because that builds more trust than a written testimonial. And then behind the scenes stuff, if you can show behind the scenes of your staff working on a project or building whatever it is you build, then that often gives you credibility and humanizes your brand. It creates emotional connection. Now we're back to mobile optimization again. Some of these themes are going to run through every one of these discussions. So 58 to 60% of web traffic today comes from mobile devices. And that's why I've put here that responsive design is non-negotiable. And if your site loads slowly on mobile users have no patience for things that don't load quickly. And if you think about it, you've probably been guilty of that too. You go to a website on your phone, it takes forever to load, so you just X out and go somewhere else. So it's important to test your site on multiple devices to ensure that it works on all screen sizes. That seems like an undoable task, but there is a way to get it done without actually having to have every single physical device out there, and I will share that in a later video. As I mentioned before, page speed matters. The preferred time for a page to load is 1 second. When it goes to 3 seconds, bounce rate goes up by 32%. Shocked me too. If you go to 5 seconds, conversion rates drop by over 4%, almost 5%, with each additional second of load time. And then if it goes to 10 seconds, about 50% of people are just going to abandon your site completely. Page speed matters. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that, not just some technical switch that you flip or software that you employ. There's a whole bunch of things that contribute to page speed. So how do you know if your website needs user experience help? Well, if you're getting high bounce rates, visitors are coming, but then they're leaving immediately. And if you're not tracking that sort of thing, Triad Web Advisors can help you and show you how to do that. You're also getting low conversion rates. If you're getting lots of visitors, but nobody's buying anything, then you definitely got some problems with user experience. And then, of course, if you get any negative feedback from your customers, if they complain about difficulty finding things, then you definitely need to listen to that and take appropriate action. So here's just a little graph that shows the business impact of great user experience. You can see that when they improved user experience, the conversion rate went up, the bounce rate went down, the average session after the optimization went up, and the pages per visit went up. So you can see that it really does impact your website's ability to do its job. So how do you go about assessing your own user experience on your own website? Well, you have a couple of options. We offer a do-it-yourself website audit checklist that you can download from our website, or you can get us to do a professional full website audit or assessment and where we can uncover hidden issues that are affecting your performance. And then you'll also want to track your key metrics before and after the improvements to see if it really is helping. So if you'd like Triad Web Advisors to help with this, you can go to our website at triadwebadvisors.com. You can order the full website assessment, or you can download our free checklist there, and the links for those are in the description below this video. Thanks for watching, and here's to your success.